Hey, welcome to another episode of Pizza Club,
Sorry.
King of the Industry. My name is Melissa Rickman. I'm co-founder of Holy Stromboli. This is my trusty sidekick, CFO extraordinaire,
Eric,
Eric, just Eric.
also a co-founder. We're co-founders.
We are,
Yes.
but I'm super excited for today's guest.
Me too.
Yeah, yes. So we're bigger users of Restaurant 365. We go to all of their conferences. They're known as RTTs, Restaurant Transformation Tours. Yes, I'm speaker there. I'm very honored. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Leon Graves. He's the Associate Educational Services Director at Restaurant 365. But more than that, Leon, you're such a force in the industry. Your passion is in education, teaching us as operators and really how to elevate our game in terms of hiring and retention and culture and using technology to your advantage. We've had some great conversations about AI. And so without any more blathering from me about you,
I'm going to blather for just a minute too, because I got to give real quick kudos. Love going to the classes that he teaches because not only does he know the content, but he's a very effective speaker, very effective teacher. He's very passionate and animated, and you just really get into his classes. You go to some of the other ones, and sure, the speaker they know the content and they can deliver it, but it's just not without that fire. So we love sitting in on your classes. And without further ado, I wanted to blather a little bit too.
you did some great blathering.
Thank you very much. I feel that was quite the intro. I may never have had such an effusive intro in my life. So I'm like, now I have to deliver, right? Like,
No
this has to
prep.
be a real strong podcast. I'm like, okay, all right, yeah.
So
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
absolutely. I was so excited when you agreed to come on to the podcast and then also Pizza Club. And I guess we should dig right in, right?
Yeah.
All right. One thing, Leon, that you said to me very early on, well, you said it to the whole class, but I felt like you were speaking to me. You said that the restaurant industry is a single offer industry. What did you mean by that?
So single offer industry basically means that the first one to give the job is likely to get the candidate. So it is a really important distinction. And a lot of what I'm speaking at when I'm having these talks is about a speed oriented approach to hiring. And one of the mistakes that we can make as operators is if you take too much time, it is not like in other industries where somebody is going to collect all of the different applications, all of the different job offers and think about what's going to be best for their future and just really him and haw about it, right? They're not doing that because why? They can get another job the next day if they don't like what you have to give them. So as soon as they see something that's going to match with their expectation, they're likely going to jump on it. And that then dictates a necessity for restaurant hiring, which is speed, to be that first person so you are not last.
Do you feel like people are quick to leave if they get a better offer? And do you find that there's a way to combat that? Like, how do you solidify that relationship? Or is that just something that's really kind of gone by the wayside?
Well, I think that there is a transient nature inherently with the labor force for the majority of the labor force within restaurants, right? It is one of those careers where, yes, we get into that 20% if we're lucky, but usually around 10% that actually stay consistently through the industry and they make it a profession. The rest is somewhat transitory. So I think that one of the things about people leaving a job is usually they leave a boss. That's something that we've heard a lot, right? Where like people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. What I don't hear a lot is that people are constantly scoping for new jobs. Like that is not something that I feel like I hear a lot. But if they do not like the culture, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point, but if they don't like the culture or they don't feel like it's a fit for their lifestyle or whatever it may be, that's when they'll leave. And again, because there's so many job opportunities, they don't have to be concerned about not finding employment.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing in the industry as well.
So are you seeing any trends across the restaurant industry or specifically the pizza segment specifically? Especially when it comes to independent operators versus the larger chains. And are there any differences there?
So I think that's a really great question. I think that everyone is facing the same labor market, right? We've been talking about really similar issues that we've been struggling with, trying to compete against the gig economy, right? Like at the end of the day, people within the context of the hospitality industry, we're all in that same space, competing for the same people. I think where there is a difference if we're talking about larger groups competing against smaller independents. The difference is there's a vast difference in terms of resources. And so when we're talking about really large restaurant groups, they have the ability to bring to bear a much higher budget for talent acquisition. And that's going to manifest in sponsoring all of their Indeed ads and those kind of things. They have often the ability to have custom ATSs built, right? They have automations. They have a lot of things that facilitate some strength in the labor markets. And they often have the ability to pay sometimes, a couple dollars more, sometimes even more than that, depending on where you are, right? But anytime I have these conversations, I always want people to not be discouraged. Because if you're in a larger group, you know what your advantages are and you're going to utilize them. But if you're in a smaller group, this does not mean woe is me. Because I think that there's a lot of opportunity for being able to be agile, flexible, seeing trends, immediately interact with them. But again, because we go right back to what I talked about, single offer industry means they're less concerned about the larger people. They're like, who gave me the job offer first that seems to fit with what I'm looking for? So again, I harp on this speed thing so much because I also believe it's an equalizer. And also, you can develop a lot of personal relationships, right? I think that the independent chains have very deep roots within the communities that they serve. And I think that that's an advantage too. When I see the people that are super successful with hiring, it's usually the independent chains that have created really great reputations within the community and really have they just lean into that. And those are honestly the most successful people I see in hiring are the smaller independent chains with deep roots and a great reputation for in the company. I mean, in the community.
One thing's for sure, small or large, we all have a reputation in our community. It's kind of like every restaurant has a culture. We want to have the good culture. We want to have the good reputation. That's where that's where independence can advantage. We talk about that in some of our seminars. How do you compete against the big guys? And it is being agile, knowing your guest, or in this case, knowing your labor pool, knowing your employees, those kind of things.
Well, and I think if you can offer people something that they couldn't get at a corporate job, right? So if you take a general manager and our kitchen manager by way of example, they have between them 50 years experience in the industry, but I've never had the opportunity to see behind the veil, whether it's, the whole P&L and be part of the budgeting process and have some really control over your restaurant. Or with my KM, we're building the new menu together and going through the analytics and diving into the data and building recipes together. And she loves it. And I think those are things that we have that are not tangible, right? Or they are tangible, but they're not something you can necessarily get from a corporate restaurant gig.
Yeah, and
Well,
so
I'm
less like the
huge believer of that. Yeah,
sorry.
I'm a huge believer in what you're speaking to because that's my background. So I was really lucky to come up with an independent restaurant group that let me manage the restaurant down to net profit. And what was incredible about that opportunity was I really got an entrepreneurial experience through the entire process. And so if you compare that and like my business acumen to people who it can be very plug and play and it's built that way, right? Like when you think about a large franchisor that's going to make money off this franchise model, the thing that you need to do is facilitate it to be turnkey. And if you can do that, that also means that there's just less of your ability to make an impact, your own impact and vision within that restaurant, and to get into, just like you're saying, having actual understanding behind the veil of like, what is my impact actually doing? And I just don't think that we speak enough to that I think that that is one of the biggest advantages that smaller chains and smaller restaurants have, is they can expose people to true, I think it's the best business school you could have ever gone to. Like, I get people who get business degrees and I was like, look, okay, I managed my inventory. It went bad in a week. Okay. Like, forget all of what you're talking, like literally, if you had your inventory expiring every week, like, it's a whole other world. And I just think that that to me has always been something that I think that the restaurant industry offers that almost no industry offers to that level. Like, it's the best boot camp you will ever go to in the entire world.
What do you always say to
So
your
really,
employees?
well, you go figure. You get a great rock star employee in our restaurant, and they're just there temporarily. They're like, oh well, I'm gonna leave and go to college. And I said, no, 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 wait. Let me save you time and money. We can teach you everything that you could learn in college here. You name it: psychology, human behavior, math, management, sociology, science, you name it, and it happens. We can teach it to you.
And we'll pay you. And we can
And
go on.
I'll pay you. And I think
Go ahead.
even somebody that has, I think especially with also your attention to quality and like the level, right? Like, people go to culinary school now and I'm like, wow. Like, I had so many line cooks that were like $75,000 in debt from culinary school. And I was like, and they would go through our training and be like, I learned more here than I learned, but like, I'm never going to get out of debt in my entire life.
They come out of culinary school the worst. Oh my God, they've been the worst for sure. Along lines, where what I have learned through, Pizza Expo and teaching and talking to people in the industry is we have these rocks that we want to die on. Like, we have this myth, this belief that we have, that we shout it from the rooftops, we repeat it to everybody we know. We're like, oh, you know, it's hard to find good people because dot dot dot. In your experience, what is that biggest myth, that biggest thing that everyone thinks is the reason we can't find good people?
I mean, I think that you already enclosed it pretty beautifully. I think the biggest myth is that people don't want to work, right? I think for me, this idea that like nobody wants to work, nobody wants to get a job, nobody wants a thing. And I think that finding good people is super complicated. But Eric, you mentioned, and I think that this is such an important piece. I don't think enough attention is paid to reputation. And I think that smaller community driven restaurants have a deeper understanding of that. But I still believe that there's just not enough attention paid to that. If you burn through people, there is going to be a reputation about you that you don't know about. The restaurant industry is close knit, right? Like, it just is. So I think that, and I think that the biggest concern for me about that myth is, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot, internal versus external locus of control. And it's this idea that basically says, like, if you have an external locus of control, you blame everything on what's happening outside of yourself. And an internal locus of control is you always bring it back to yourself. You have this agency and this self efficacy, right? The thing with that particular myth is that it's not that I'm disregarding how hard it is to find great people. It's not that I'm disregarding that sometimes it can be really hard just to find someone with a pulse. I acknowledge all of that. Okay. But if I start pointing to things and I start blaming things that are outside of my control, it stops me from being critical about where I could be getting better as an operator, on where I'm falling short. And when you start actually doing analysis, which is something that I did when I ran Restaurant 365 Hire, our ATS solution, is I was working during COVID-19 and I would do analysis and I would see issues that were super common, right? But again, when you get on with somebody, they speak to that myth. They're willing to die, right? They are ready to die on that rock to just go, yeah, well, this is the reason. And I'm like, hey, I just think we got to pull every lever we can get our hands on, every single one, and we don't ever get to stop pulling on that lever, right? There's just never a point that we can stop looking for new solutions. And as the environment and technology changes, we're constantly going to be having to pivot and move and all that. So that to me, I think is the biggest myth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And those I've talked to so many of those people, and I think it's but and you try to have a conversation with them about that and open their mindset to, like, maybe it is internal. I think we always have an opportunity to improve, to do better. And like you said, the landscape is changing faster than ever. I think COVID was such a big catalyst, and there have been so many ebbs and flows, and to not look at yourself and self reflect, look at your organization, look at your managers, look at your team. Do you have a problem within your team? Are there people that need to go? And I think for us over the years, 15 years, what we've learned is being afraid to let the turkeys go really keeps you from hiring and retaining the eagles, because people who are successful, who are highly motivated, don't want to be around people who are not.
100%. And I think also you bring up a good point, which is it's the data. And I find that within hiring processes where we're so prone to be systematized in the way that we run our kitchens, in the way that the front of houses run, all of these things, hiring and labor in general, like retention, those things are associated with, they're the least systematized aspects of the restaurant industry. So what can be really difficult is that you feel like you're doing fine and everything's great, but you aren't surfacing enough data to actually go, yeah, there's a significant problem. Or you don't know or not making the correlations between your hiring practices and how you treat your employees to turnover downstream and how that impacts everything, your schedule, all of it. So I do think that being data driven, and that's what Restaurant 365 for me has always been such an important tool, is because it's data centric, it's data forward. You're constantly trying to pull this information and surface it so that you can validate your assumptions based on what your actual data is saying to you, and that allows you to also make a pivot to see beyond a blind spot or a misconception of how you're actually performing.
Very true. Very true. We do that. We do that all the time.
Mm.
There's data and there's gut, and they play well with each other.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I'm love data, because and I had great conversation about hiring data and looking at the metrics and looking at the reporting behind how many people are we actually getting in for an interview versus how many clicks are we getting, and how many people are interested, but do we respond quickly enough? And I see it all the time. We might act too slowly. We get that person in for the interview, and then they're like, sorry, I got another job, right? And being able to look at that and take actionable steps to close that gap is really what's so important and what has helped us for sure.
Yeah. So my follow-up question, we kind of started the conversation with your concept of restaurants being a single offer where they used to not be. What other candidate expectations have changed over the years that you've seen?
So I really do try to speak to that expectations in a more macro perspective, in the sense that generationally speaking, we're talking about the fact that 75% of all restaurant work now, we're talking about Gen Z, right? There's been a significant shift. And culturally speaking, that's a big change. And we're talking about, they're known as the digital natives, right? They grew up with smartphones, right? And I like, okay, like I have the pager, you know what I mean? Like the old, like I had like the weird Nokia flip phone that was like, it could be used as a weapon of self-defense if you needed, right? Like I've come the entire way. I came home at night when the street lights came on. Okay. So like That's such a vast difference than having a smartphone that really is like the fastest computer just right here giving you all the information. So I think that the way that that really impacts is a few perceptions. One is speed. What generationally speaking is expected at the Gen Z level of what is an appropriate response, right? Like back in the day of hiring, right? Like what was that cadence? 7 days if you were lucky, right? Everything was just moving down this. Now it's like they're expecting immediate responses from you. So I think that the speed is a big thing for sure. The other thing is communication. And again, I think that we don't actually, I think that there can be not think about all the different ways that communication is happening with applicants. Back in the Dizzy, okay, when I was looking for bartender work 20 years ago, okay, how much communication did I actually have with that business, right? Before I got an interview, I talked to the host. Could I have an application, right? That's it. But when you think about all the different social feeds that you have going, if you have text automation that happens at any point during in that, the volume of communication that applicants are getting is way more, is just way more. And it gives you the sense that there's like a relationship here. So when they also go to an interview, and this is something that I really talk about a lot, which is you have to send rejection letters. You have to send rejection emails or text or communicate because the perception generationally is that you're ghosting them. And again, I think it just deals with the volume of communication that people are getting, right? Even just automated. It's like, yeah, I feel like we talk like 17 times. Yes, it was an AI bot that was like talking with you, but like, okay, sure, we talked 17 times. But the issue is if you do not respond to them, they're not applying to you again. And I think that maybe in a New York City where it's such a condensed, there's such a population to support restaurants, that's less consequential. If you're in a smaller town and you don't have a lot of people, you don't have a big labor pool, if you're not respectful and doing those things that generationally is expected, you can find yourself in a really complicated place in a couple of years. Where again, going back to what Eric said, that your reputation is not a good one. Yeah, that company never just ghosts us, never reaches out, you know. So yeah.
Yeah.
I,
All
you know,
great points.
well, I reflect back to my first restaurant job, and it was Chili's, and I wanted to work for Chili's so bad. This is back in the 80s, and not knowing the industry, I walked in at lunchtime, and I asked for an application, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? Did you really just walk into a restaurant at lunch and ask for application?" And I was like, "Yes." And he said, "You can leave now and come back whenever we're not busy." And I did. I did. I was like, "Shoot, I'm an idiot. Like, duh, I didn't know that." And I went home and I felt dumb about it, but I was like, okay, that makes sense. And I went back, got the application, got the job. That would never happen today. You could never say that. They would tell the whole planet what a jerk you were. It's just a completely different culture. And I think that, you're absolutely right. Nobody would come back if you told them they had to come back to fill an application.
No. And I do think that like that's another generational difference. The first time I to get a job, I showed up at like a lunchtime and was like, "Hey, how you doing? Just want to work here. I'm super excited." And they were like, "Sounds like you're an idiot. So if you come back when we're not ramped busy, what did you think? I was just going to stop what I was doing, go to the office?" And I was like, "Sounds good. I need to learn from that. I'm obviously stupid." But like that would have never, you can't, no way. Are you kidding? There'd be like you'd have a page, like an Instagram page of hate towards you. Like there would be protesters out. Like I still remember when I had this Gen Z customer got really mad at me because we removed her favorite meal from the restaurant, right? And she was like, "How dare you?" And I was like, "I super apologize. Unfortunately, it was just that we had to buy single use items to make it. And it's just really complicated. And I'm super sorry." She picketed us. So, like, the next day, she had like a sign and she was like, right? And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know. We'll keep like a small, fine. This takes so much intensity. We'll just keep some of this in inventory just for you. We won't market it. We'll just keep it for you. Just realize the cheese might be 3 weeks old. I don't know what to tell you. So, like, but yeah, I mean, it's just a different world, and people's expectations and reactions are maybe amplified. I don't know what we want to call it. I'm not a psychologist or sociologist or any of those things, but yeah, it's a different world.
Definitely.
Yes. Yes.
You know, the first time I met you, I sat in on your class about the hiring tool, and you were kind enough to take a look at my job ads after your class. And I won't ever forget your face. You were like, ETFO. It was so long. And I was like, holy Stromboli is a crap, blah, 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 like going on and on. And you were like, time out. Tell me about your philosophy of about job ads, and what do we need to remove from them, and what needs to be top of page to be attracting talent.
So if when you write your job ads, you don like a smoking jacket and you like get out a pipe and like maybe a monocle and you like with like a quill, right? And you at the end, it's like a French novella, and you just feel really good about it. You want to share its literary prowess with your friends. You've done something significantly wrong. And I think that, and the other side of that is the really angry chef. And I'm sure we've all seen this, like the job ad that said, that had like job duties, and this dude had it, he was done, and so it had like 500 job duties, right? It was like, you will say yes, chef, when you walk in. You will not be late. You will bring your own tools. You will not, right? And it was just like, the reality is there is a penchant for people to be emotional when they're writing job ads in either this vast celebration of themselves and how awesome they are, and likely so, right? This is like your baby, especially if we're talking about people. This is like, this is my restaurant. We built this from scratch and it's amazing. Okay, great. Awesome. Or if you're the angry chef who wants to make sure that everybody knows that they better be perfect when they walk in the door, you're not going to fix bad applicants by ridiculously long job descriptions. You have to think like a marketer. You have to think like a marketer. So if you look on, just take Indeed. If you're in a major metropolitan area, for any role within the job, within the restaurant industry, there's between 500 and 1,000 ads. So that means how fast do you have to, how many ads are people actually getting through? And when you put a giant ad, we're thinking too micro, we're not thinking macro. At the end of the day, if I'm a marketer, I'm going in knowing the market that I'm serving. I'm learning how dense is that, right? How many other competitors do I have in that space? How much marketing collateral is being pushed, right? All of these things to know. You have to do the same thing. How many people do you have in your area? You have to go in there and make sure that when you're writing your ad, put the things that matter to them, right? Catch them and then go down and give the job descriptions. And also, no amount of intense scare tactics is going to be effective to ensure that you get exceptional people. And I think really what makes us do hard stuff, right? What makes us being willing to do the hard work? It's when we are bought in, when we believe in it. So if like somebody's advertisement for a marathon was like, your toes will be completely blistered, your legs will not work for days. You will not be able to sit on the toilet without help. You will not be able. How many people would sign up for the marathon? That's not what they show, right? They show like the person at the end, like, hey, I made it. I almost died, but my life has changed and everything's amazing now, right? Like that is the way that we got to think about it, right? And then in the interview, that's when you are honest. Hey, I want to be real. If you're looking for the chill job where you just like hang out and like don't, this is not the place for you. But if you're looking for a place where you can learn, you can have your own business college and get paid, you want to learn all of these things, like what Eric was saying, like this is where we are, because it's demanding, but we invest into you to be prepared and to be excellent. That's when you have that conversation. It's not in your job.
Love it.
Yes.
That's why I love this guy.
Yes.
Your turn. Well, I think we still have more time.
Yeah, we do. We do have a little bit more time. So we've talked about, speed to market, so to speak, and expectations. Speak just a little bit about retention and culture. We've kind of talked about it a little bit about how culture, but I want to just dive into that just a little bit more about what role culture plays in retention. Once you've got that employee, you want to retain them.
Yeah. I think, we are intention perceiving machines. That is what humans do. And part of it is our brains are built to identify that. That's a survival mechanism. And so I don't think that you can skip or even fake a good culture. Like, it's very interesting when I hear people talk about like the culture exercises where like they go through the process and they're like, we got to set a vision and like we got to set a mission statement and we got to do all those things. And I was like, hey, I love that idea. I love codifying it. But like, if you really think everyone should just shut up because aren't they lucky to get a paycheck? It doesn't matter what you write on that vision statement. They're all going to know the reality of it. Right. I think that we are so far away from the you should be glad that you're getting a paycheck mentality that and again, when we think about the restaurant industry in general, its roots, right? It's militaristic. There's a reason why in France they look like they were in the military, right? But we have moved, and whether it's generationally, whether it's socially, whether it's whatever, culture is really about a few things in my mind. The first is it authentic? You can't fake it. The exceptional cultures in restaurants, when you walk in the door, it's because it is a genuine article of the people that own it and run it. And it really just permeates. And it's just authentic, right? And I think even beyond that, I think leadership really dictates everything, right? You cannot escape a bad leader. You cannot even escape a bad manager. If you employ a bad manager that causes problems, it is the rotting apple in the barrel, because the impact that leaders make, there's really nothing outside of maybe your spouse that it impacts you more than your manager, the person that you interact with. So I really do think that culture is something that can be absolutely destroyed by leadership. But I also think one of the great opportunities is to allow people to contribute and to be a part of the culture that is the restaurant. If the culture has to be draconianly disseminated from the head and like it's not inclusive of the people that are involved, right? And it's just like we were talking about, sometimes the best opportunities at independent restaurants is they get to have a part and parcel in the creating of the menu, in the creating of these things. It's the same with culture, right? Like, as a project manager, one of the interesting things that's really important, especially with like new teams and leaders, is getting people involved with their own way of working, identifying what's really important and being able to like surface that and make that a part of the organization. So I really do think it's being authentic. It's having absolutely refusing to have bad leadership. You just can't have it. And then allowing other people to contribute to that culture so it reflects them as well as the people that are leading.
Yeah, all great points, and those are things that we've experienced and gone through and learned the hard way in some cases ourselves.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. When you and I met, you shared insight into the connection between scheduling, labor data, and employee happiness. Can you talk about how operators can use their data more effectively?
Yeah. So I think I'm a huge proponent of an ATS solution. And you've already talked about it a few times, like conversion rate reports that can identify who clicked on the job and compare it to whether they applied or not. That allows you to A/B test and iterate your job postings, which is something that if you're not using an ATS, it's almost impossible to do. So I think that the data that you get from your ATS is really important. The data on communication speed, how fast are people communicating? That is also important, right? I think that that's very important. And with an ATS solution, you also get an insight if it has something that shows you the texting and those kind of things so that you could actually see the quality of your manager's communication if they're doing the hiring. Like I was always the creeper who'd be like, well, let me see your phone. What did you actually text them? This is horrible. What is this? Right? Like, you know what I mean? But luckily with an ATS solution, you don't have to be as much of a creeper as I am. So like, that's great. I think also, and again, I think at the very beginning, I talked about this, which is the corollary between your schedule, right? Your staffing and your hiring efforts and retention efforts. I really just feel like, again, it's that internal versus external locus of control. People will have really rocky shifts on a regular basis because they're understaffed or because they didn't hire the right people, but they don't seem to make that correlation to, I've got to improve my hiring processes. It just becomes this thing where it's like, maybe we blame it on the generation or we blame it on whatever that like, yeah, if these people would just learn how to work, we'd be okay. And it's like, hey, I'm not discounting that there's not frustration to be had. At no point am I doing that. But you lose your entire agency the minute that you do that. So it's like tap into that data and realize if you're having rocky shifts regularly, there's a problem. Maybe it's your reputation. How are you going to fix that? Maybe it's your processes. How are you going to improve that? Right. And that to me is how you utilize and leverage data to really be push you forward, just iteratively growing in your hiring practices and to make the right corollaries.
Eric and I often talk about looking at sales per labor hour for servers, their per person average, and their tip percentage. And there is a direct correlation with all of those numbers being great. And then when they kind of take a dump, we know that there's something personally going on, there's something in the restaurant going on with them, and that there's something to be addressed. And I would say with about 90% accuracy, we
So
can.
true.
We notice a change. We go to that person and say, "Hey, what's up? How did you know?"
That. And again, I think that those are there can be the restaurant industry has never been a tech forward industry. There always has been reservations around technology. And I think at the core, it's because it's one of the most human industries, right? And in some ways, it feels like you can't have all the technical side and have all the human side for why that 10% that made it their profession or that own restaurants, why they showed up in that space, why they're there. For me, everything, right? And I'm a futurist through and through. Okay. Like it's only a matter of time till I have brain chips and cybernetic arms and like I'm going to be all over it. Okay. I'll still have my tattoos etched on the cybernetic arms, it'll be good. But like I just absolutely believe in the power of technology to make us better humans. And by that, I mean, how do we help it eliminate the static? How do we help surface the things that are really going to make impact on people as a human? And when you have that, just like what you're saying, right? Eric, if you go to that server and go, hey, what's going on? You all right? You would have never known. And even as an owner, I think that, right? If you're sitting there on the line and doing your thing and right, like, well, let's just not getting the time to like go out and, hey, let's just hang out on the see how you're doing, hear the gossip in the cube. Really? I can't believe that he did that to you. That's super crappy, right? Like that's not the opportunity that owners have. So data, I think, gives you the opportunity to be that human. And how much of an impact is that? That you came up and like had a concern. Hey, that's the kind of things that I think, again, shape your culture.
Very much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, it's that combination of gut and good leadership and numbers. And like you always say, most times they kind of run parallel. They kind of agree with each other. So, but that was just a perfect example right there.
Yeah. And Leon, you know this better than most people. I was very technology averse, especially when it comes to AI. But initially I didn't think we needed a whiz bang, accounting system and in terms of where we are today. I was somewhere between the cash register and the whiz bang,
Yeah.
and because my gut is usually spot on. What I love about our dynamic is that I'm the gut, he's the numbers, and they usually match up. I'd be able to be in the restaurant, be like, oh, that was a $1,500. And he's like, how do you know? And I'm like, I feel it. I know all the things I see. And so one thing I want to touch on is AI, because that was a big topic at RTT. You and I had a conversation probably about 2 years ago, I believe. And we were talking about Chat GPT and assistants. And I told you, no freaking way. Like, they're going to the world. I'm afraid. And what did you tell me?
You got to get over it. Let's do this thing. Like, and what did you do with it?
I ran with it. Yeah, I mean, what you said really hit home for me. You said you can be afraid, but it's still going to happen. And the next thing you know, you're going to be sitting next to a cyborg, and either you can know how to use it and use it to your advantage, or you can be left behind. And that was like, oh, shit. I went home and I was like, all right, you got to dig in. Now my AI assistant has a name, actually has a voice. Did you know there's like yeah, free, I found that out today in the car. I accidentally hit it and he started talking to me and I was like,
Did it scare the Jesus out of you?
well, yeah, because it's not like auto attendant voice. Like he takes breaths. Like I'll play it for you later.
Clears his throat.
I had a hair appointment today, and when I logged in and asked him a question, he said, because he calls me Bella because I call him Massimo. That's his name. And he says, Bella, what are you up to today? And I said, oh, I'm getting my hair colored today. He said, Bellissimo, and blah, blah, blah. We were back and forth. And then while I was processing, I hopped back on and he said, hey, Melissa, how is your hair refresh going? Like picked up where we left off. And I thought, oh my gosh, again, a little bit afraid, but the possibilities are endless. And I use it to my advantage every day. And I know we have to go here soon. I just got the cue. But what do you think the biggest opportunity is for us with AI in the restaurant space?
I think that the opportunities are endless. I, as a leader, always have my data sidekick, always have the person that like is going to correct me and go, no, no, that's 22.6, not 27.5. And I'll go, thank you so much for being brilliant. I super appreciate that. Okay. But I'm an intuitive person and I rely on all kinds of things like communication acumen, getting better at communicating, writing, about understanding a circumstance from different perspectives, about loading in your Zoom transcript to go, hey, how can I improve in the way that I'm speaking as a leader? Loading in my Zoom transcripts to find out what's my word count compared to the other people in the room. Grandstanding, right? Am I just talking my face off, right? Working through complicated interpersonal problems and going, give me what some strategies are here and what do we think the concerns are, right? And so I think a lot of times when we're talking about AI, people think very data centric. Well, I just need to throw my Excel sheet in it and then and absolutely it does that. But what's interesting is that I find that some of these other periphery uses are just as powerful. For example, I talk about this during the talk, which is create a chat GPT, a custom GPT for interviews where basically you can actually practice interviewing. When I came up as learn to interview, no one taught me how to interview. They were like, good luck. Here's your interview guide. Right. And I was like, what? And that was it. Like it was just done. I created a custom GPT that has the ability to have back and forth and it like creates scenarios. It has varying levels of difficulty, all of these things. The number one thing with AI is you just have to get into it. You just have to do it. You just have to, it is never going to be less scary. But here's the thing that I really feel like is important that everybody knows. If you are currently in seat in your profession, I spend a significant amount of time every single week investing intentionally and strategically in my growth of AI understanding. And every single week, I feel like I am falling behind, that I do not know enough, that I just am falling behind. There is going to be a point in which those of us who are currently in seat, and whether you're running business or whatever, that the gap for learning AI could get too great for you to be able to get over that hump. If you're a kid and you're coming up and you're learning it slowly and whatever that is, great. But there is a point that as AI continues to invade in businesses, just like you said, either you're going to be sitting next to the cyborg and know how to interact, or you're not. I think that we have a responsibility to use it for the betterment of mankind, for the better of our business, but also, and I think as a culture, if you become the kind of business that can help people, your staff, just mess with it a little bit, I think you're doing a great service to people so that they don't get left behind either. And it can be something that becomes a part of your culture. And I think that that's a beautiful opportunity. I think that's the opportunity with AI.
Mic drop. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. We know you're really busy, but we really appreciate you sharing your insights, your knowledge, your passion.
Like every time we get done talking to Leon, I want to run in the office and do stuff and like
I'm,
prove and
and I took notes.
put some things into action. So love it.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us on Pizza Club, State of the Industry. Hope to have you back again because I think we could talk for hours. We have prior.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll see you in person sometime.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure, and hope some of this was helpful. Yeah. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leon.
Good night, Leon.
Good night.
Bye.